Time has come to paint this antique. Did your soul just leave your body? Don't worry, I'm not going to paint it. I was just fishing. I'm absolutely not opposed to painting antique pieces of furniture. I think you can do what you like with pieces of furniture. But for this piece, I wanted to respect that quarter sawn oak timber and just give it a bit more of a rustic farmhouse look. So if that's your vibe, stick around because I'm going to show you step by step exactly how I achieved that on this piece. My first step was to remove all of the handles and the hinges, and I pop everything in a dish as I'm going because I'm notorious for putting things down and not being able to find them later on. I decided the best way to get this finish off was going to be chemical-based stripping, and that's mainly because it was oak. So I've got some firm bristle brushes there that you can see. I use poly stripper, that's in the tin behind. I've got some safety gear, some pretty hardcore gloves, and just some random tools that you can use to get into little nooks and crannies if you need it. The trick with chemical-based stripping is to have a lot of product on. You need to have a thick, even layer across the surface for this to work effectively. I also like to work on one section at a time. So I'm doing the top of this piece and around the trim, and that's because some timbers can actually darken with paint and varnish stripper, and oak is one of them. So if you leave this product on for too long, it will start to leave weird dark shadows. So doing sections at a time just gives you a little bit more work time, so you're not rushing to get the product off the other part of the piece. Poly stripper works incredibly fast. So after around 10 to 15 minutes, I start scrubbing down. I don't put any water on the piece just yet. I just start scrubbing and I scrape the excess off after I've scrubbed each section. The brushes are what is going to get the existing varnish out of that grain. So it's good to have a couple of different sizes. So I've got my green brush that you can see there, and then I've got the long handled brush, and both of them have different size bristles. My next step was to use a wire brush. Now, wire brushes can seem scary. You might think they are going to scratch the timber, but they aren't. As long as you are going with the direction of the grain, you aren't going to damage the surface by using one. What they will do though is get into all of the little places that the plastic bristles couldn't get to. So you can see on the right hand side where all of that varnish is coming out of the grain, and on the left hand side, that's where I haven't used the wire brush. So it's a huge difference. I repeated the same steps, working section by section across the entire piece, and then I gave everything a thorough rinse down. For the details in the doors, I followed the same steps. I applied a thick, even layer, and you just want to make sure that you're really pushing the product around to make sure it's gotten into all of the detail. Once you get to that 10 to 15 minute mark, you want to start scrubbing. No water on just yet, just like the flat surfaces, and you really want to work your brushes around. So go in circles, tilt your brush, make sure you're coming at it from multiple directions. I used my wire brush on these sections as well, trying to maintain working with the grain. There were a couple of times where I crossed the grain, but it's a bit tricky when you've got details like this. But for majority of it, you want to try and remain with the grain. You can see here, this is after one round of stripping, and I can't stress to you enough, it's all in the scrubbing. I let the piece thoroughly dry overnight and then came back with 240 grit sandpaper by hand across the details. While I was hand sanding, I noticed that there was a little bit of a gap between the detail, this scallop section in the center, and the actual body of the piece. So I applied some glue, clamped it down, and then used some little tack nails just to get it sitting flush against the body of the piece. Once the glue was dry, I used my orbital sander and 240 grit sandpaper across the straight sections of the body, and then I moved on to the top using that same 240 grit. After you have stripped a piece of furniture, 180 to 240 grit sandpaper is sufficient to get everything back down and smooth again. The only reason that I would go in with a lower grade of sandpaper than that is if I had scratches on the surface. With this piece, I didn't have any scratches or dents. Once everything was sanded down smooth, I cleaned the piece down with methylated spirits to remove any excess dust. Now this is European oak, and European oak has a very honey warm undertone when it is finished with a traditional wax or a varnish, and I didn't want that for this piece. I wanted something that was a little bit more toned down, so I applied a paint wash to neutralize those warm undertones. Paint washing is a fantastic technique to learn if you are thinking about flipping furniture because you can achieve so many different looks with it. It's completely customizable and you've got a lot of control over the outcome outcomes of your timber furniture when you understand the key principles behind paint washing. I created a guide through the link in my bio, which will teach you everything that you need to know, what ratios to use, all of your color theory, so that you can go out and confidently choose different tones of paint to put into your paint washes to achieve your desired result. When you've gone to this much effort to refinish a piece, you really want to seal it with something that's going to be highly durable, that's not going to craze or yellow over time like some polyurethane can, but you still need to get that level of water resistance and stain resistance. So with that in mind, I chose Fitty's hard wax oil in matte clear for this piece. This one goes on incredibly easy. I'm just using a roller and it does give a slightly wet look, so you can see that beautiful warmth from the oak coming through, but it's just a little bit toned down having put that paint wash on. This is straight after the Fitty's hard wax oil was applied. It comes in a range of sheen levels, but this is how the matte actually dries down. You can see it just has a beautiful subtle sheen. To freshen up the original handles, I really wanted to try Barkeeper's Friend. So many people rave about this. They think it's amazing. So I wanted to give it a shot. And whilst I do think that it's a great product, I think that you get the same results by soaking your handles in vinegar and giving them a really good scrub. I used Barkeeper's Friend on the hinges as well, but before applying them back onto the piece, I gave them a little spritz with WD-40 just to make sure that they were swinging smoothly, and then I reinstalled all of the handles back onto the drawer fronts. And guys, this is the end result. I'm obsessed with how this turned out. You still see that stunning quarter sawn oak grain. It has a subtle warmth to it. Everything just looks a little bit softer, and the brass handles just complement the piece perfectly. I'd love to know what you guys think though. Be kind in the comments, antique lovers. Let me know, is it a nail or a fail?